This LOS is describe the use and limitations of concentration measures in identifying market structure. Identification of market structure. How should one measure market power? The theoretical answer is to estimate the elasticity of demand and supply in a market. If the demand is very elastic, the market must be very close to perfect competition. If demand is rigid, inelastic, companies may have market power. So regression analysis is useful in computing elasticity, but it requires a large number of observations. Therefore, one may use a time series approach and, for example, look at 20 years of quarterly sales data for a market. However, the market structure may have changed radically over those 20 years, and the estimated elasticity may not apply to the current situation. An alternative approach is a cross-sectional regression analysis. Instead of looking at total sales and average prices in a market over time, the time series approach mentioned above, we can look at sales from different companies in the market during the same year, or even at single transactions from many buyers and companies. However, analysts often use simpler measures to estimate elasticity. The simplest measure is the concentration ratio, which is the sum of the market shares of the largest N firms. To compute this ratio, one would, for example, add the sales values of the largest 10 firms and divide this figure by total market sales. This number is always between 0, perfect competition, and 100% monopoly. To avoid the known issues with concentration ratios, economists O.C. Herfindahl and A.O. Hirschman suggested an index where the market shares of the top N companies are first squared and then added. If one firm controls the whole market, a monopoly, the Herfindahl-Hirschman index, HHI, equals 1. If there are M firms in the industry with equal market shares, then the HHI equals 1 divided by M. This provides a useful gauge for interpreting an HHI. For example, an HHI of 0.2 would be analogous to having the market shared equally by 5 firms. So we'll just have a look here. On the left-hand side, we've got the concentration ratio. On the right-hand side, we've got the HHI index. So the concentration ratio is the ratio of the sales of the 10 largest firms in the industry divided by the total sales of the industry. So it ranges from 0, perfect competition, to 100, monopoly. The advantages are it's easy to compute. The disadvantages are it does not quantify market power. It does not consider the ease of entry into the market, and it's unaffected by mergers of the larger competitors. And there's a blue box example on that in the text, okay? The HHI is the sum of the squared market shares of the top N companies. The higher the HHI, the more concentrated the industry. The advantages are it's also fairly easy to compute. It is affected by mergers of the larger competitors. The disadvantages is it does not quantify market power and does not consider the ease of entry into the market. Okay, we'll just do a quick practice question on that. Suppose a market has 10 suppliers, each of them with 10% of the market. What are the concentration ratio and the HHI of the top 4 firms? A, concentration ratio 4% and HHI of 40. B, concentration ratio of 40% and HHI of 0.4, or C, concentration ratio of 40% and HHI of 0.04. Okay, the correct answer is C. The concentration ratio for the top 4 firms is pretty easy. That's the 10% plus 10% plus 10% plus 10% equals 40%. For the HHI, remember, we take that 10% and we square it and we multiply by 4. So that's going to be 0.10 squared times 4 equals 0.01 times 4 equals 0.04. Another quick practice question. One advantage of the Herfindahl-Hirschman index is that the index A is difficult to compute, B fails to reflect low barriers to entry, or C fails to reflect the effect of mergers in the industry. The correct answer is B. The Herfindahl-Hirschman index does not reflect low barriers to entry that may restrict the market power of companies currently in the market. So on the right-hand side, I just again gave that table from a previous slide. Again, just a quick review. The advantages, easy to compute, and it is affected by mergers of the largest competitors. The disadvantages: does not quantify market power, and I put in green there, does not consider the ease of entry into the market, which is B, fails to reflect low barriers to entry. So we'll do another quick practice question. An analyst gathers the following market share data for an industry. So we've got the sales in millions of euros. So for ABC, 300 million, Brown, 250 million, Coral, 200 million, Delta, 150 million, Erie, 100 million, and all others is 50 million. The question is, the industry's 4-company concentration ratio is closest to A, 71%, B, 86%, or C, 95%. Okay, this question is pretty easy, but just the one thing you have to pay attention when you're reading the question, be very careful, because I put that in red there, that it's the 4-company concentration ratio, okay? They're giving you actually 5 companies here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but they're asking for the 4 companies, so that's a little trick, okay? So you can see the way that we calculate the concentration ratio, we just add up the sales of the 4 companies and we divide by the total sales. It's as easy as that, and it equals 86%. Now, if you would have added the 5th company and made a 1,000 divided by 1,050, that's going to equal 95%, and you would have maybe potentially answered C. So the correct answer is B, it's 86%, and this is an example, excellent example of CFA type where they're giving you some data and you have to read the question very carefully that it's a 4-company. A lot of people would say, oh, I'm doing the concentration, I'm going to add up all the companies and divide by the total. See, they gave you 5 companies, this one said all others. So you just have to pay close attention to detail, but in all, pretty easy question. And we're going to finish this LOS with one last practice question. So an analyst gathers the following market share data for an industry. So we've got company Zeta, market share 35%, Yusuf 25%, Xenon 20%, Waters 10%, and Vlastos 10%. So the industry's 3-company HHI index is closest to A, 0.185, B, 0.225, or C, 0.235. Again, same point they made as the previous question. They're giving you 5 companies here, but they're asking for the 3-company HHI index. So when you that's why I highlighted there in green the 3. And what you do is you take the market share percentage and you just square it and you add them together. So it's 0.35 squared plus 0.25 squared plus 0.2 squared, and that equals 0.225. Okay. So these little calculations are not that difficult. As you can see, once you've practiced them once or twice, pretty easy. And that's the last slide for this LOS. Thank you.